Imagine charging a beach in the face of heavy machine gun fire, not with a semi-automatic rifle, but with a 6-foot English longbow and a heavy broadsword strapped to your waist. While every other soldier in World War II was embracing the terrifying power of modern ballistics, one man decided the old ways were still the best. His name was Jack Churchill, better known as Mad Jack, and he remains the only soldier in the entire conflict to have recorded a confirmed kill with a bow and arrow. He famously claimed that any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed. This is the story of a man who was born centuries too late, yet became the most legendary warrior of his era.
John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill was born in 1906. While he was born in Hong Kong, he was a Briton through and through, descending from a line of men who served the empire. From a young age, it was clear that Jack was not built for a quiet, sedentary life. He graduated from the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst in 1926 and was commissioned into the Manchester Regiment. He was sent to Burma, but the peacetime army of the late 1920s was far too boring for a man of his temperament. During his time in the East, Jack didn't just focus on his drills. He became an expert at anything that required physical mastery and a touch of the eccentric. He rode his motorcycle across the entire Indian subcontinent, a journey of over 1,500 miles, often through territory that had barely seen a motorized vehicle. He learned to play the bagpipes, a Scottish tradition he adopted with such fervor that he eventually became one of the few Englishmen to take a top prize at the piping championships in Scotland. By 1936, the lack of a good war led him to leave the army. He spent the next few years working as a male model, appearing as an extra in films like The Thief of Baghdad, and refining his skills with the longbow. He was so proficient that he represented Great Britain at the World Archery Championships in Oslo in 1939. But as the shadows of Nazi Germany grew longer across Europe, Jack knew his hiatus from the military was about to end. When Poland was invaded, Jack didn't hesitate. He re-enlisted immediately, telling his friends that the country had got into a mess, and he had better go and help get it out. By May 1940, Jack was a company's second-in-command with the Manchester Regiment during the Battle of France. While the British Expeditionary Force was being pushed back toward the sea by the relentless German blitzkrieg, Jack Churchill was having the time of his life. He patrolled the woods near the village of Lepanet, moving silently like a medieval hunter. His men watched in disbelief as their commanding officer signaled for an ambush. As a German patrol approached, Jack didn't reach for a grenade or a submachine gun. He stood up, drew back his heavy bowstring, and loosed a barbed arrow. It struck the German sergeant in the chest, killing him instantly. In the chaos that followed, Jack's men opened fire with their rifles, but the message had been sent. In an age of tanks and Stuka dive bombers, Jack Churchill had brought the weaponry of Agincourt to the 20th century. After the miracle of Dunkirk, where Jack survived the grueling retreat, he volunteered for a new experimental unit, the Commandos. This was exactly what he had been looking for: small-scale, high-intensity raids where individual bravery and unconventional tactics were rewarded. During the 1941 raid on the German garrison at Vagsø, Norway, Jack was in his element. As the landing craft ramp dropped, he didn't rush out shouting orders. Instead, he stood at the front of the boat, playing the March of the Cameron Men on his bagpipes. Only when the music finished did he draw his claymore sword and lead the charge into the smoke and explosions. The sight of a man dressed in British battle dress, playing bagpipes amidst a storm of lead, was enough to paralyze many defenders with sheer confusion. Jack and his commandos tore through the town, destroying oil tanks and capturing prisoners. Even after a demolition charge exploded near him, leaving him wounded and covered in blood, he refused to stop. In 1943, during the invasion of Italy, Jack took his audacity to a new level. Near the town of Salerno, he was tasked with capturing a German observation post at the village of Picoletti. He didn't want a noisy, bloody firefight. Instead, he took a single corporal with him and slipped into the darkness. Using only his broadsword, he moved from sentry post to sentry post. He would leap out of the shadows, the silver blade of his claymore gleaming in the moonlight, and demand the Germans surrender. By the time the sun came up, Jack Churchill and his lone corporal had captured 42 German soldiers and a mortar squad.
When asked how he managed to take so many prisoners alone, he simply replied that if you tell a German loudly and clearly what to do, if you are senior to him, he will cry "Jawohl" and get on with it.
But even a man like Jack couldn't evade the odds forever. In 1944, he was sent to the island of Broadsword in the Adriatic to assist Yugoslav partisans. The mission was a disaster. The partisans retreated, leaving Jack and a handful of commandos to face an overwhelming German force on a hilltop.
As the Germans closed in, Jack did the only thing he felt was appropriate. He sat down on the rocky ground, took out his bagpipes, and played "Will Ye No Come Back Again," until a German grenade knocked him unconscious.
The Germans were baffled by their prisoner. Because of his name and his prestigious military record, they suspected he might be a relative of Winston Churchill. He was flown to Berlin for interrogation and eventually sent to the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. Most men would have broken under the weight of such captivity, but Jack Churchill was not most men. He immediately began planning his escape. His first attempt involved crawling under a wire fence and attempting to walk to the Baltic coast. He was caught just miles from freedom. Undeterred, he was eventually moved to a high-security camp in the Alps. When the power failed one night in 1945, Jack simply walked away from the camp and into the mountains. He survived on nothing but stolen vegetables and raw eggs, walking nearly 150 miles across the treacherous terrain of the Brenner Pass until he stumbled upon an American armored column in Italy. Despite the years of fighting and the time spent in a concentration camp, Jack was furious that the war in Europe was ending. He demanded to be sent to the Pacific to fight the Japanese, reportedly saying that if it wasn't for those damn Yanks, we could have kept the war going another 10 years. He was transferred to Burma, but by the time he arrived, the atomic bombs had been dropped and the war was over. For Jack, this was a tragedy. He truly loved the thrill of the hunt and the camaraderie of the battlefield. After the war, Jack didn't settle into a quiet retirement. He qualified as a paratrooper at the age of 40 and moved to Palestine to serve with the Highland Light Infantry. During the conflict surrounding the formation of Israel, he coordinated the evacuation of a medical convoy under heavy fire, wearing his full dress uniform and, of course, his medals. In his later years, he moved to Australia, where he became an expert surfer, being one of the first people to ride the tidal bore on the River Severn back in England. Even in his civilian life, the eccentricity never faded. While commuting home by train in his later years, he would frequently throw his briefcase out of the window into his own backyard, so he wouldn't have to carry it home from the station. Jack Churchill died in 1996 at the age of 89. He was a man who lived by a code of chivalry that had been dead for centuries, proving that even in the age of industrial warfare, the spirit of a single, determined individual could become a legend. He remains a reminder that sometimes the most effective weapon on a battlefield isn't a gun or a bomb, but the unshakable courage of a man who refuses to be anything other than himself. If you enjoyed this look into one of history's most eccentric warriors, make sure to subscribe.